One of the most successful animation studios today, with one enormous box office hit after another, is Illumination Entertainment. Ever since they launched onto screens with Despicable Me 9 years ago, their characters and movies have been inescapable. However, there does exist a backlash towards the studio, with many people considering them to be safe and formulaic in how they put their films together. While I would not put Illumination among my favorite studios, I still quite like the output they produce. So I'm going to be defending them, as well as clear up some misconceptions. To start off, why are the budgets for Illumination films low compared to other computer animated movies? Most people seem to think Illumination films cost in the $70 to $80 million range because that's some sort of penny-pinching cheapstakes. Although that budget is hardly what I would call low. It just seems low compared to the $150 million plus that DreamWorks, Disney, and Pixar tend to spend on their productions. One reason that films are so economical is because they are not animated in California. Illumination instead outsources the animation production to a satellite studio in Paris. Have you ever watched the credits for an Illumination movie and noticed they're filled with French names? That's the reason. Illumination and its founder and CEO, Chris Maledandri, also decide extremely early on during the development time whether to move forward on a project or not. Most other studios have spent years on development, but not Illumination. They don't even have qualms about putting certain projects in turnaround if they feel it's not a right fit for them. The Ugly Dolls movie, opening in May, was originally set up at Illumination, as was a Clifford the Big Red Dog movie currently being developed at Paramount. Another issue people tend to have with Illumination films is that they have a uniform look, with characters having similar designs. The Illumination eyes and mouths have become especially recognizable features. This is mainly because Eric Guillon has become their chief designer, responsible for how their characters look ever since he first came on board Despicable Me. While I would like to see Illumination spice it up and have somebody else have a go at designing their characters, Eric Guillon is an extremely talented artist, and it's neat to see how he shaped the visual look of an entire studio's films. The production design also seems to get flack for favoring a simplistic color palette and backgrounds, but I feel Illumination is improving on that front. If you allow me to gush about the Grinch for a minute, the ways the directors Scott Mosier and Yarrow Cheney used shadows and shot composition really helped open up the locations of Whoville and Mount Crumpet, and resulted in the studio's most beautiful film to date. The Illumination animators also continue to up their game in the character animation department, as they've gotten more expressive and their movements are more fluid. The trailers for The Secret Life of Pets 2 especially seem to showcase this. Beyond the animation, the other aspect Illumination is often criticized for is the safeness of their scripts. And yes, there is a certain comedic formula they apply to their works, and they're not known for a whole lot of experimentation in that department. There's a particular emphasis on comedic gags and finding funny things for the characters to do. However, I find a lot of the time their films are able to figure out some humorous scenarios. Much of the enjoyment of the first Despicable Me is watching the back and forth antics between Gru and Vector, and then also seeing the contrast between Gru's villainous personality with the sugar and sweet orphan girls. I also like The Secret Life of Pets, primarily because the filmmakers knew exactly which quirks to exploit for the animals. A dog waiting outside their door for their owner is funny, as is a dachshund doing, well, anything. And looking beyond the odd Facebook memes, those minions are also funny comedic creations most of the time. Because they just speak gibberish words, the filmmakers and animators are required to create gags visually, and that does result in the occasional inspired moments. The Minions movie especially seemed to have fun with seeing how many wild shenanigans they can put them into, whether it was them being tortured in a dungeon, or one of them trying to seduce a fire hydrant. The Minions short on the Grinch Blu-ray, titled Santa's Little Helpers, is especially able to find some brilliant comedy out of putting them in the North Pole. Now, I will admit that with most Illumination movies, I'll finish watching them, and my first thought is, well, that was cute. So yes, I will agree that their stories are on the simple side, but a few times they've taken a few detours. Sing especially does this by constructing an ensemble film with a focus on multiple stories involving a wide variety of characters. Even though it is the classic let's put on a show setup, and a number of scenes exist to spotlight popular songs, each character is given their own personality and conflicts. Sing seems to owe quite a bit to the Robert Altman film Nashville, and how many anime movies can you think of that bring up comparisons to Altman's work? Even the Grinch, I would argue, took some inventive story turns in adapting Dr. Seuss's famous Yuletide story. While not the first version of How the Grinch Stole Christmas to try to explain the Grinch's hatred for the holiday season, the filmmakers used the character as a way to explore the effect loneliness and isolation can have on someone's social anxiety. I felt too many people wrote off the Grinch as just another retelling of the Seuss story when there was a bit more under the surface. Now, I grant you, I would like to see them try a bit more experimentation in their work. The films make oodles of money, and Universal gives them some of the best marketing. So the studio has a chance to really take a risk on something that does not fit into a neat little box. Although one thing they have done is bring in new blood to direct their projects. Most of their movies have been directed by either Chris Renaud or Pierre Coffin, two very talented artists and filmmakers certainly. But we've also seen Sing be directed by acclaimed music video director Garth Jennings, while The Grinch was directed by Kevin Smith's longtime producer Scott Mosier and animator and production designer Yarrow Cheney, who won an Emmy for the Dilbert opening. I am very interested to see if Illumination sticks with their usual team for the upcoming Super Mario Bros. Adaptation, or if they hire a new director to come on board. In fact, let's talk about Super Mario for a bit. This was a major get for Illumination and Universal, as Nintendo has been leery about any film adaptations of their more valued properties ever since the live-action Super Mario Bros. Movie. However, this announcement also led to concerns that they would simplify Super Mario and fill it with their standard silly comedy. Yes, the video game's about an Italian plumber trying to save a princess by jumping on turtles. If anything, Illumination is a fitting studio for Super Mario, as their characteristically colorful and bouncy animation really does lend itself to the Mushroom Kingdom. I don't think we'll be seeing Dino Haddon in this adaptation. And with Shigeru Miyamoto serving as a producer on the movie, it already has Nintendo's seal of quality. I, for one, am extremely excited to see how Illumination brings Mario, Luigi, and Princess Peach to the big screen. One point of contention for many people has been the marketing. Their advertising is inescapable, as their parent company, Universal, spends a hefty amount of money on trailers, television spots, and billboards to get the word out there. Corporate synergy with NBC also means you're likely to see a fair amount of advertising on that network, and that's not even getting into the Universal Studios theme parks. Some people find their marketing annoying, which I understand, but it clearly works, as the box office numbers can attest to. Putting the Minions in their logo also creates that sense of familiarity in viewers' minds, that Illumination is the company responsible for those talking Twinkies. One thing that tends to bother me when people talk about Illumination is when they frown on children for loving their movies. Why do children love their movies? I think it's because they have appealing-looking characters, which are put in funny situations, and high-energy action scenes, although not too high energy that they become sugar rushes. What I find particularly impressive about the successful Illumination properties, like Despicable Me and The Secret Life of Pets, is that it's today's generation that made them hits. Hollywood right now seems focused on reviving older properties for family audiences. The box office success of movies like Finding Dory and the live-action Beauty and the Beast are fueled just as much by nostalgic adults as they are by children wanting to see them. But the Minions are a popular IP created in the current decade, and made successful primarily by those born in the 21st century. And just because children love Illumination does not mean they're not watching the newest Pixar movie or Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Children are more intelligent than people realize, so I don't care for the implication that they're brain-dead zombies just watching what their parents place them in front of. The last thing I want to say that bothers me is when people say Illumination puts little to no effort into their movies. When someone says that about animated movies, or really any movie, but mostly animated movies, it gives off the impression that they don't actually know how they're made. The amount of script drafts written, the number of storyboards drawn, the various character designs Eric Yon comes up with, the countless decisions the directors have to make over 3 to 4 years of production requires a large amount of effort to do. That's not even mentioning the many man-hours it takes to animate them and render these films to completion. You cannot make a full-length animated feature for the big screen or the small by just sitting in a hammock all day. Every animated film from every major animation studio is done with an enormous amount of effort from everyone involved, and I find it incredibly disrespectful to say about a studio's output that they put no effort into it. The films at Illumination, whether you like them or not, are still the results of many talented artists working around the clock to produce something that will hopefully entertain billions of people around the world. To conclude, Illumination Entertainment may not be my favorite animation studio, but I'm still amazed at what they've accomplished in such a short time. They create funny stories with appealing characters, animation that seems to get better with each movie, and contain an optimistic spirit that I admire. I've enjoyed some of the antics of a supervillain turned father figure, thought they made some interesting creative decisions in adapting the work of Dr. Seuss, liked seeing their personifications of household pets, was impressed with how one movie divided time between multiple singing mammals, and haven't even minded the global domination of those mischievous minions. While I've yet to see an Illumination movie that I love, I know they will eventually make one. I would like to see more original movies from them in their upcoming schedule, as it's primarily filled with sequels. But they are still a young animation studio, filled with many brilliant artists, directors, and animators. Under the supervision of Chris Meledandri, it's amazing to see how far they've grown and had an impact on the public consciousness. I've seen every Illumination movie in theaters, and that definitely won't change anytime soon. See you next time.